Oh, 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 oh.
Hello, I'm Oriana Fox. Thank you for tuning in to Multiple O's, the spin-off podcast for my talk show, The O Show. The O Show is a live performance piece that mines the conventions of daytime TV talk shows for all that they're worth. It features artists and other experts who have no difficulty spilling the beans about their lives and opinions, especially when they defy norms and conventions. So if you're interested in candid confessions, nonconformity, creativity, and mental health, you've come to the right place. Hi there. Welcome to episode 2 of Multiple O's. I'm, of course, your host, Oriana, and I'm an artist with a PhD in self-disclosure. Today, I'm continuing my conversation with the artist, activist, and author Hamja Ahsan. In his book, Shy Radicals, he proposes the creation of an independent homeland for shy, quiet, and autistic spectrum peoples called Aspergistan. It's a nation that will be devoid of all synthetic forms of speech, especially talk shows. Hamja and I will continue to discuss our mutual affliction and interest, shyness. I also asked him to respond to the episode of The O Show entitled Killer Conversations, which is currently available on the Oriana Fox YouTube channel and on my website at orianafox.com/video. So without further ado, here's the rest of the interview. We haven't talked hardly anything at all about the content of the show.
Okay.
Like I can't make you do that,
okay,
but
no,
I
yes,
kind of want to.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. Was there anything that sticks out from the content of the interviews as being...
I mean, I said it in the first. I felt a bit out of place when I first walked into the O Show set. And like when I got the best reception I got in my entire speaking tour, then I was obviously wrong. Like obviously those people related to what I was saying. But at this particular one, I felt even more out of place and like not... I still feel that way. I don't feel... even though like I've got a first class degree from like Central St Martin's and like I've got all the art qualifications, I could not walk into a private view in Shoreditch or Hackney and feel like these were my people and like I want to be here or like I'm even enjoying myself. And
I have a PhD from visual cultures. I still feel totally uncomfortable anywhere near anyone in that department except for Alice, my supervisor. Like I feel so... they're so intimidating to me. Everyone there. And even the students, I just think. And even with my own students here, I feel sometimes I assume they're smarter than me, even though they couldn't, they might be smarter than me, but like clearly I know, like I have a PhD. Yeah. They couldn't possibly know more than me as BAs. I mean, maybe they could. Maybe some of them can, or they're mature students and stuff, but like, I just automatically assume everyone else is smarter than me. It's a very strange thing. And then it's always surprising to me as it gets revealed that they're not. Yeah. I'm like, why did I think that about them? Or especially if one of them is critical of me. If a student is critical of me, I immediately think they're smarter than me. And that's why they're criticizing me.
Yeah. I get a similar revealing thing. Like, I sometimes went to the flat of the editor of my book, who's a quite famous philosopher and activist, and we went on a shopping break together, and she bought instant noodles, and her partner came in the flat and he started toasting pita bread and dipping it in hummus in a really like... I didn't know like competent adults did that. I was like, I've never done that in front of like another... I was like, do you eat instant noodle? I thought that's what like, you know, like man, child, 10-year-old. Like I took it as like, I do the same with pita bread and hummus, but I take that in this sort of, and then when I saw her doing that, I was like, wow, you do that. So I live on my own and I don't want to live with anyone else. And when I move to Maastricht later this year, I'm probably going to be sharing some sort of flat. And I'm dreading that because I might be dipping hummus, put in and like eating instant noodles, and I imagine they'll have this ultra sophisticated like culinary chef, like would like know like I also find it like Edward Scissorhands, I guess. He's not speaking. He's a freak. I guess all shy people identify with Edward Scissorhands. But imagine someone who wasn't, didn't have Scissorhands and wasn't of the same social outcast type as him, could also make hedges just as nice as Edward Scissorhands. How would that make him feel? And Edward Scissorhands was back in the day when you could believe that, because of your shyness, you had some sort of other special magical trait that sort of compensated for it. And there's sometimes that narrative within like autism spectrum disorder, like they might have an amazing memory or my
really
brother,
good at something.
Yeah, well, I mean, my brother has this. He's diagnosed as Asperger's syndrome. He has this amazing ability to learn languages. So no one in my family knows Arabic, but he taught himself Arabic from a textbook at the age of 16 and got a first-class degree in it and like translates medieval Arabic texts, and he's now learning Persian and like Abbasid history and stuff. And I feel that was entirely due to his autistic trait. I don't know if we have a compensatory, like.
I don't think I'm special in any.
It's part of the disillusionment is like, I just stopped believing that. I stopped believing. Don't you think it's depressing if we just thought ourselves purely as a deficiency and nothing else?
That would be, but yeah. So I didn't finish kind of what I was. No. It was a while ago. Just like about the whole. I was trying to return to the show and the statements on the dancers hold up.
Yeah.
And this, you called it toxic positivity.
Yeah.
But like basically this practice of shame attacking, you have to. It's accompanied by, when it's done within rational emotive behavior therapy, it's accompanied by unconditional self, other, and life acceptance. So,
yeah.
So the idea is that you have to believe that everyone is inherently has inherent value, right?
No.
Regardless of their performances.
Yeah.
So you have to convince yourself that, and also like the other thing about shame attacking is that you have to do it until you get the feared response. The response you feared most, because then you learn that actually you can tolerate that.
Yeah.
So like I have to, if I'm really going to practice shame attacking as a therapeutic practice, I have to constantly tell people when I don't know what they're talking about. And I have to constantly admit to not knowing, and to the point where maybe somebody does think I'm stupid. And then I have to sort of like actually, I don't really care that they think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Or I can still unconditionally accept myself.
Yeah.
Regardless of that error.
I understand.
Yeah. So that's what that's where those words come from. It's like, I'm not worthless. Actually, I'm worth something. I have some inherent worth. Yeah. And I have a right to kind of.
That sounds like a variation of Jesus loves you.
It is. Yeah, that's what my father said, actually, when I was telling him about it the first time.
Yeah.
I know, it sounds like a cult almost, like you have to do
I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant that in an entirely positive way. Like,
okay, yeah.
No, because, I mean, so I'm ex-atheist. I've left atheism, I left humanism, I left rationalism in my early 20s. And, like, that notion of, like, unconditional love. So Jesus loves you don't have to do anything. It's beyond like instrumentality. Whereas people would think like I have some relatives who suffer from quite severe schizophrenia and like are socially isolated, and people are like, yeah, but this relative's a very good cook or like does something around the house. And it's like that notion of instrumentalized rationality, like you have to be useful in some ways, is actually the harmful thing, or actually she doesn't have to be. And that can be embodied in institutions politically, like the welfare system. Like I believe in universal basic income or like inalienable human rights. Like they're embedded in those ideas of, well, Jesus loves you, you're God's divine creation. Like I don't, yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, it's an atheist. I mean, Albert Ellis, the person who founded RABT, was a staunch atheist. So his way was, trying to find
to me, like atheism as
an atheist way of kind of valuing ourselves and other people. And that's anti-fascist.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's problems. I mean, because there's still normative, like within any kind of psychotherapeutic paradigm, there's going to be normative values.
Yeah. I also view the like world of like the spiritual is on the side of the shy sometimes. Certain zones, like I'm sure the Catholic Church has done some awful things, but sitting in a cathedral, silent, saying nothing, is like the ambience of it. And like sacred spaces, the zone of you don't have to say anything. You just be there. You're just there. You just like standing by candlelight or like the architectural protection of those things. Other spiritual practices like Quaker silences, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
I feel like they turn around. Like I associate shyness with like being bullied inherently, childhood bullying. Like everyone would bully the shy kid, right? And so it's a reversal of values. So like instead of being like the runt of the pack or the last to be picked in the team or the lowest, the low, you're in company of the exalted through being shy, through not saying anything, through daydreaming, through transcendental lostness.
So yeah.
Oh, the show.
The show.
I feel really just, I don't know, like.
So yeah, because I guess because it was so jarring the beginning. Yeah, I mean, was there anything in any of the interviews that was good to you?
It's not about goodness or badness. It's just more like that I feel like the world I belong to doesn't belong in that world.
Right.
Like going into that area of East London, I associate that's the only place in the whole of the UK where like Muslims have political power. So like East London Mosque is like a huge, you can't win an election without going through them. And I haven't been there to pray, but I went there to like campaign against Guantanamo Bay or like show solidarity to other like oppressed people. And like so it's same place you could just walk down the street and there'll be loads of women in niqab. And I have a consciousness right now in this historical moment of that behavior and being criminalized. And like, I remember, so there's certain, Brian talking a lot about this intimacy and like sharing a bed with someone. And like, I was just thinking like, I don't know, I was like, do we coexist or do we live in the same, I don't know.
Yeah, I do remember my camera, like one of the camera operators, kind of director of photography for that episode was sort of like, what the hell does Brian Lobel know about about social anxiety? What the hell, like I said, that's why I want to explain because it was about this conversation starters, and because my motivation for wanting to do it was my shyness.
Yeah.
Even though that wasn't what motivated the choosing of the speakers. Like, it wasn't like I was picking people who were experts on shyness. It was just, I was picking people who were experts on conversation or having difficult conversations or, having more challenging conversations or whatever that was. Or just talking a lot. Like Marcia just talks a lot.
It still has this fireside chat feeling when you're actually speaking. I don't think it's like,
yeah.
I think because you're not an actual real host. Are you a decoy of a host though? Are you? I mean, you are actually a real host, but you're not.
I'm not a very good host, I don't think.
But I think there's something embodied in Oprah Winfrey's notion of like universal normative life, and like. It's no surprise to me she goes on to be like an advocate for like invasion and the war on terror, and like the fact it's like this is how all people are like across the world, and these are the best values in the world. And that there was a particular moment which has been shared endlessly, which is when she does an interview with Aishwarya Rai, the famous Bollywood actress, who still lives with her parents in like her like late 30s and 20s, and that's quite common within like South Asia, and still is. And then her finding that so like abhorrent, like, and intolerable, and like strange, like why this millionaire, beautiful woman would choose to do that. And why that's actually quite normative in like Indian society. But you're not
Antithetical
Oprah Winfrey.
to.
I just went on a
I know. I
rant
mean,
on Oprah Winfrey.
I would like to think of the Osho as like a parody of Oprah, and
you think of
the stories that are being told would not be status quo stories; that they would be anti-normative.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to think that. I don't know. You don't think so?
I thought they're really normative, though.
They're really normative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
That ended the conversation. Okay.
I don't. I just there's particular things which are really normal and average in my life that I don't know where it sits. It's obviously not normal and average. So I only feel like I only experience gender and sexual diversity with my Muslim friends because they have such a spectrum of belief. Whereas I feel like all my secular liberal friends are actually quite homogeneous and monocultural. So, for example, I have friends and colleagues I work with, and they might not believe in like shaking hands or hugging or like being in the same presence but it's a whole spectrum. So if I have a series of Muslim female friends, like it's like you go back and forth and you know which one you can share hands with and what you can't. And some of them wear like niqab fell, some of them have standards of modesty, some of them don't. But there's all this spectrum of coexistence. Whereas I actually feel like obviously it is to be absurd and for like in any other sphere of life for like not shaking hands to be considered like something it'd just be considered strange if I was outside those zones. I'm agnostic, so I'm an ex-atheist, but I'm actually agnostic about Islam, so I don't actually know what my actual. And then being in the art world in those areas, those are the areas where the Muslim migrant populations live. So I will walk past East London Mosque when I go to the Whitechapel Gallery or whatever, or the Live Art Development Agency. And I question and rewrite and re-represent what part of myself belongs to each. But then when on the government we live in and the global government we live in, whether even in India now, you're having this eradicated, very violent. So, I mean, a couple of days ago, an 85-year-old woman was burnt to death in Delhi.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
So, and then when I grew up, the Bosnians were killed because they had names like Fatima and Mohammed. And when I go to Slovenia, it's still there. Like the mosque there, which just been built. And when I move there, I'll see there was like 50, 60 years till it was actually accepted as being viable. Just, I don't think it's been solved as a like issue of like coexistence and stuff. But there's flare-ups, or there's like, some mass shooting happens in Germany or somewhere, or the other way around. I don't know. I don't know what. So those were the like things that were ever present in my mind when I was watching it. I was thinking, my friend Hassan Vada, he works at Tate. I call him as a joke Tate Sheikh, because he's a very sincere practicing Muslim, but he lives in this art world and he tries to do Ramadans and Eids. And I went to one of the Eids in Tate Modern, and like it was sad to see these, like it was almost like self-organized. It wasn't really given public or institutional support. So he's very sincere about getting more interaction. Like there's a prayer room in Tate Modern behind like a toilet, and like there's one next to like the Turner paintings, but they're quite hidden spaces actually. I remember his parents coming to art night. It was when they take over a whole area of London and make contemporary art in it. And his parents were just like, "Oh, it's not for me," and they went home. And then he felt really sad. Yeah, and it's like with me, I wouldn't have no inkling that my parents would actually go in the first place.
Right.
They'd probably feel it's not for me too.
So if it did appeal to them, then it would be anti-normative.
Yeah.
So that's the standard. Like, my parents can enjoy it, it's anti-normative.
That's such an interesting question, actually, that I'll have to settle.
Well, it just reminds me of, like, Brian. I asked him about, like, what makes him how he is, like, because he doesn't feel any social anxiety at all. And he says it's because he had that. His mother modeled good behavior and liking people.
No, but I've also found it interesting that he described having such a loving mother as a privilege.
Yes.
And so, like, in the whole privilege talk thing, I was like, maybe that's why I'm so down on myself. Like, because I don't have, like, mother love. My mother does love me, but she doesn't get what I do entirely. Not in a particularly sensitive way. Yeah. My
mother loves me, but she's a shy person, so she modeled shy behavior that I copied, And my dad, on the other hand, is not shy at all. Like,
my dad's very shy. My dad doesn't really. I've never had a conversation with my dad in my life, actually. And people find that odd. I've actually never had. My dad just does. He likes gardening and the Quran, and like we don't. I also like. I would sit in the car with my dad, and I'd just like stare at the raindrops on the window, or stare out the window. And that's what I do for the entire journey. And then I only realized later in life that people found that offensive or like intolerable, or sometimes violently intolerable. So I'd often be ganged up on because I if I was in a coach journey on a school trip, I would just stare out the window or look at the raindrops. And I didn't understand what I was doing wrong, but I'd always have these accusing faces, or being told quite horrible things like, "Oh, why would anyone want him? Or his parents want him? Why are you here?" That sort of spare peg feeling. And when you put that thing about the big signs up saying you are not worthless and stuff, it's like, so say if I was staying in that mashed potato audience and I was just like in a melancholic, daydreamy state, I'd feel worthless. I feel like
there were people who didn't stand. I mean, there's definitely people, like, I always ask the audience, like, who doesn't want to be filmed, and they get sat in a place where they're not filmed.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, like, I know someone was in that audience who's not in the footage.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to be, and she didn't get up and dance. And, so to defend myself.
I know that felt like accusation from my side. I was just describing my
what you
existential state in terms of like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Marcia also was saying how just because you talk a lot doesn't mean you're not shy.
Yeah.
It's something Susie Scott talks about in her book.
Yeah, like performative shyness and actors and stuff.
No, but it's slightly different from that. It's like, let me see if I can find the quote. Oh, yeah, here it is. She says, quote, "The privately shy person can be harder to identify. Shy extroverts appear confident, talkative, and gregarious, and seem to be natural performers in social situations. Yet, the actors behind the performances often feel quite self-conscious," unquote.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, Marcia says when she talks about the little man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. Sometimes there's a scared little man behind a big personality.
Yeah.
There might be another quote from Scott related to this. She talks about it again.
There's so many notes in there.
Yeah, I have a lot of...
I did actually love that book. I'd highly recommend everyone read this book. Shyness in Society, The Illusion of Competence by Susie Scott, which is only a very expensive academic book, but I'm sure you can find it.
It's so expensive.
It's like £60 in hardback. So in some ways, she doesn't even want to be read either. She wants to be part of this unread academic library.
Well, it's a very academic book. I don't think it would have...
I think it's actually quite easy to read.
It is easy to read.
It's not that...
Yeah,
it's quite a plain prose and stuff. And I think it's also quite appealing. Like, a lot of the messages in there are quite appealing to other... I wish it wasn't an academic book. I wish it wasn't the, like, general market.
Yeah.
And the same, my book is in, like... it's an indie press. It's by Art World thing, so it's circulating in ways... It's certainly not mass circulation. So I'd sometimes wonder whether we all want to aspire to like be this mainstream Jordan Peterson type bestseller or whatever, or just like living within our, even like the O Show, it's within an art world circulation. It isn't actually Oprah. It's not on like some globalized television network, right?
It has hardly any audience at all.
And the obscurity is maybe like where we want to be.
Yeah, because
Rather
I was
than-
just watching Chelsea Handler last night,
Yeah.
thinking I wouldn't want to be talking to Shania Twain, like whoever the hell else. I don't even know their names.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I want to go back to this thing about shy people being able to be vocal and opinionated in online discussions.
Mm.
And I know how you are on Facebook, because like you're one of the few people I pay any attention to on Facebook. Like I just don't go onto Facebook. I guess it comes down to that whole like fearing I'm stupid thing. I don't feel like I know enough to be pontificating on the internet even about things.
It's weird because
Whereas you obviously don't have that same insecurity.
No,
you feel
I
strongly.
suppress 90% of my opinions. Actually, I really do. I don't actually, and I don't partake. Like, and it's not the case. People have echo chambers. I actually disagree with like half of my feed these days. I don't. I've moved to Instagram actually because people are nicer.
Oh, really?
But
you're
just
always
one
like,
blog.
I mean, you post like a million things a day on Facebook.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
So,
I'm just saying,
like,
what drives that? Like, I don't have that in me to.
Maybe when my brother was in prison, I was ultra active. And
I was thinking that might be the reason. Like, it might be to do with that, because you talk about in an interview about how that stopped you from being an armchair activist.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so it was that.
That's why I've become a public speaker.
That's the Free Tala campaign that Hamja initiated and received many awards for. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, I will put a note in the show notes.
But it was a forth of sincere, authentic truth against the synthetic misinformation of the Home Office and the government. So it was like truth to power, yeah. So I have no problem with like truth to power talk. Like I don't regard truth to power talk as belonging to the extroverts or selling out or loud people. Like the loud people are the ones who want to like overshadow actual shining light of truth. And I also, it's weird because my preferred mode of address is like, I prefer just speaking sincerely about how I'm feeling to like a crowd. Yeah, I think maybe I prefer that too. I don't know. I think I just prefer talking to someone I know well. I like
even if we disagree.
Autism Arts Fair. When you go to it, you get which is a wonderful biennial in Kent. You get these accessibility packs, and it has free stickers on. A red one which says like I don't want to speak to anyone. Like amber one which means like I just want to talk to people I know, and like a green one which means I'm happy to talk but I struggle with communication. But I wish I could just wear those badges
great.
all the time. And it also has like a fidget spinner and like a ear noise blocker in the pack. But obviously I'd love to have that in every single festival and social interaction I do. Just sometimes I don't want to speak to anyone. Or like, I guess there's not that allowance of like thinking. It's always assumed there's something negative. Like if you don't speak, the main accusation is that you're being aloof or you think you're above them. Whereas it's often not because you're
I get
shy.
that a lot.
Right? That's a common thing. So it's that form of epistemological violence where that's so assumed that. Also, would whole disciplines be possible without like the silent observer? Like Irving Goffman is often thought as the person standing by the wall and looking, observing, having an insight into everything. People are going to listen to this, so they need to see the room we're in. It's like a room full of books, old books, antiquarian books, resources library. It's like the antithesis of the Osho. Yeah. And I don't know how many people see you outside your Osho persona. No, but you're in your.
So that's why that's why I called it multiple O's, because it's about the kind of, the different personas.
I don't know whether Shah Radicals is my persona or it's just me. Like,
Commander-in-Chief.
Of the introvert revolution, yeah. But I think also another thing that gives me affirmation of speaking in public is a sense of mission. Like, I know I'm here, I have a message, and it's an important message, and that's why I'm speaking. I'm not speaking for the sake of it. It's like, why am I here? Like, it's sort of, it can be the most unsettling thing. If you want to make someone to a shy person, you just keep asking them, why are you doing this? Why are you here? And sometimes you know that very affirmatively in a very anchored way. And that's why you speak. And
so just being asked, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Can make a person
yeah,
shy.
some person can manifest that in, shy.
Right. So that's like how shyness is produced externally as opposed to being
So I didn't know whether that would I would call that state ontological insecurity or like lacking self-confidence, but I don't know, because you can be confidently shy.
Then maybe if you're confidently shy, then it's no longer a concern for yourself or for society, right?
It's still a concern for society. I think it's more so a concern for society.
Really?
Yeah. Like even
confidently shy people wouldn't be pathologized, I don't think.
Yeah, they would.
You think?
Yeah, definitely. Even more so. Shyness are never made to feel like they're okay or normal until the introvert revolution.
Yeah.
Well, there was like a domestic counterterrorism sign for like looking at signs of like terrorism or radicalization in children. And one of the signs was about social isolation and not speaking, and things which you'd associate with like a moody teenager or a depressive teenager or a quiet teenager. They were all seen as security concerns. Like mutism is so threatening, like not speaking is so threatening. Going back to Greta Thunberg, I thought the most revolutionary thing she did is when she went on Trevor Noah, a mainstream chat show, and she didn't make eye contact for the entire thing. And I just found that firstly affirming, but just so that totally subverts the power dynamics of mainstream TV and like let so many other people in. And she is not going to be thought of as rude. She's changed the normativity of etiquette.
Yeah. I have people who said, when I first met you, I thought you were really rude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
Yeah. It's horrible. And I try to go out of my way not to seem rude.
Yeah.
Like, because of that. And
I feel like social norms are all defined without our participation in the first place. And historically, it's like nothing about us without us. The same with like shaking hands. They're like those ultra pious Muslim women who want to imitate like Aisha or someone from like early Islamic history, don't shake hands. And then it's taken as a huge insult both ways. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to. Like, it's an entirely different epistemological framework of meaning. You know, in the case when our behavior has been misinterpreted as something is clearly not, what means of address do we have publicly to correct? No, I wasn't being, apart from Instagram memes.
I don't even know what that means.
So where we can say that, like, I didn't make eye contact, I didn't speak, but it didn't mean that I was like.
Oh right, yes, yeah,
I
could see that being an Instagram meme.
Like, does it have to be a character in like a soap opera or like at a mass level? Where how would it be done?
Phoebe brings up unconscious bias training.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it could be corrected. Like, or you know, if everyone has unconscious bias training and they're taught not to be biased against shyness.
Yeah. That would be good.
That person would make eye contact. That doesn't mean they wouldn't be a good CEO.
I actually saw this job interview in Edinburgh that one of my readers signed and sent to me. And it says, and the second part of interview will consider some sort of group activity, but we won't judge you on your introvert or extrovert ideals and whether that's a deficiency. I thought one of the people on the panel was Harry Giles, who I know to have read Show Radicals, and it also has quite a sizable following in Edinburgh where this job was. So I wondered whether it was already altering that dimension of employment practice. Like ultimately, the way in which I judge success is whether it's embedded into like policy, law, and institutions. And so, yeah, maybe that is what we want, like some sort of legislative, maybe workplace training, how not to.
Yeah, how not to.
But I feel like the recruitment process in the first place is already like gonna, because I understand that, right? but I'm not going to be employed in that position of power to actually implement that as policy within my institution or like recognize other people like myself.
But she says, what Phoebe says, something like, I'm going to advocate for other people because we need to hear that. But, so it's not necessarily that you would end up in the position of power, but that the people in power might recognize you as the expert on this and therefore bring you in to advise as people advise on other
would I bring them
identity characteristics.
Yeah.
So you might be the person. The go-to person for making things better for shy people worldwide. Anyway, so that seems like a good positive note to end on. Not like, the O Show just perpetuates the status quo story of Oprah Winfrey's original show. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
There were people who I wanted to participate in Show Radical's film. There's one composition method for making the film was it's called the Introvert Crisis Helpline, and people would just call in and talk about their social issues or crises or times where they just didn't fit in or whatever. But then quite a few people just didn't want to hear their own voice in the film.
Right, yeah.
So
I know, I hate the sound of my voice. That's why I didn't want to make a podcast, I guess, because all it is the sound of my horribly nasal voice, and I'll have to listen to it. It's bad enough watching myself and hearing my voice.
You felt that negatively about it.
Well, that's why it takes me so long to edit the show, is I have to watch myself. I need a buffer. I just cannot face the material. I need some amount of time to pass to be able to distance myself from that performance, and not be picking myself apart. Or there was one incident where I got some very negative, very constructive feedback from one of the guests immediately after the show, unsolicited feedback.
Yeah.
And I just I couldn't watch it for years
no.
after that. And it wasn't even that bad. And then when I finally watched it, I was like, what was I so worried about? This really wasn't that bad.
It's weird. I consider my bit on the O Show to be the best interview I've ever done in my life. And I even tell people if I die tomorrow, I'd like to be remembered by that. In all sincerity. And that was the only moment where every joke and every punchline and every bit of timing was all...
I know.
Certain text I hit every right note, but that very rarely happens. I've done over 70 talks in 8 different countries, but there's times when the same light just falls flat, and there's times where it rips you and sometimes I went to an event in Brixton on the Monday, and I said these jokes, they all created a huge sense of laughter in the room, and then I did the same jokes in Cafe Otto in Dalston in Hackney. It's avant-garde.
I know that place,
yeah, and total silence for the entire gig. So it's in the same city, and I'm just reading the exact same piece of writing, but total
the north-south divide.
Yeah.
How funny, because you'd think there would be such an overlap in...
I don't know what it is, but then I felt really bad when everyone went silent. And then I got a few messages from some people who are present, and they really liked to find it very interesting. So the silence didn't immediately mean...
Yeah, that doesn't. It doesn't always indicate how people...
But I only regard things as successful as if everyone laughs. I actually want to be a stand-up comedian. Rather than
Me
artist.
too, me too, actually. Well, that concludes my discussion with Hamja Ahsan, which I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. It's given me a lot to think about. In the end, I'm left with the same puzzle that I started with. Defying norms takes nerve or courage that I have perhaps mistakenly equated with confidence or non-shyness. But to accept yourself as shy, to take pride in it, defies the extrovert supremacy class's imperative to be confident. How do we square these two things? Is it as simple as saying it takes confidence to allow oneself to be shy? What kind of confidence is that? I guess it's the kind that Hamja has. I invited him as a guest on Multiple O's because I wanted to better understand the nature of his shyness, why it was that instead of seeking to overcome it, he champions it. The story about not wanting to get a haircut helped me to understand. He did not feel that he belonged as a young Muslim Asian boy in an unwelcoming white British environment. But then he also did not feel entirely at ease within a British Muslim barbershop either. Therefore, seeking out a group in which he could belong, that's where the desire to found Aspergistan emerged. His shyness made him aware of the need for a particular space for people like him. He didn't need to change. The world did. Whereas for me, I struggle with overwhelmingly negative, self-downing thoughts that tell me I have nothing of value to add within the social milieu I operate within. I felt it necessary to act against those voices rather than to find a place in which those thoughts belonged. These strike me as two different but related sets of problems. Yet I'm drawn to Hamja's solution because it's by default more self-assured and empowered than my own. It leads me to ask if perhaps there could be an environment in which my thoughts of self-doubt would be normalized because I'm aware that everyone else feels the same way. I guess maybe that's the Osho. The Osho is my Aspergistan of sorts. Hopefully my discussion with Hamja Ahsan has helped you to recognize some of the positive aspects of shyness, or better still, brought you closer to the realization that we're all just fumbling our way through social life, no matter how suave and articulate some of us may seem. Thanks again to Hamja for being my guest, and to you, my dear audience, for taking the time to listen. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please share the podcast with your friends and family. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of Hamja's book, Shy Radicals, published by Bookworks. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, be sure to unconditionally accept yourself and others. We're all just fallible human beings.